Welcome to today's episode of Backstage with Randy Phillips, where I'm joined by my special guest and good friend, Matthew West. But before we begin, I want to remind you, if you haven't already, subscribe and give us a 5-star rating on the show. This really helps us get the message out. And when you do leave a review, sometimes we'll even read it on the air. If you've not met Matthew West, you're going to love this man. He has so many talents. He's a musician, he's a singer, he's a writer, he's an actor, he's even an athlete. And we'll be discussing his story and topics like what his life was like before his popularity rose, where he got his start in songwriting, and that answer might surprise you, and what it was like writing music for the movie Unplanned, and more. Let's go. Well, I'm Randy Phillips, and I'm joined by the great Matthew West. Matthew, thank you for joining me on Backstage.
Is that what this is called?
Yes.
Well, it's an honor. I don't care what it's called.
Yes.
Anywhere you want me to be is where I'll be. So thanks for having me.
You're like the consummate of everything. You're a 5-talent guy. I wish I were you. You're handsome. Well, I'm going to walk that back.
4 talent.
4 talent.
I knew something was coming. It was too positive.
Songwriter, singer, arranger,
Come on.
husband, father, Jesus follower, author,
I think I'm pretty,
actor.
You know, I don't want to brag, but I did have 3 lines in a made-for-television movie.
What's it called?
Well, it was called The Heart of Christmas, and I played the part of the friendly neighbor.
You remember your lines?
Yes, you want to hear one of
Yeah.
them? All right. It takes me a second to kind of...
Okay.
A professional...
Get in character.
Yeah, you got to get... You ready? Good morning.
That's it?
Yeah. Thanks. That felt good. That actually felt better than the actual take that made the cut. So.
Matthew, I love you for so many reasons. One, you're a preacher's kid.
I am. And I'm still in recovery for that. But
Yeah.
I think I'm doing well.
Most preacher's kids I talked to, their experience wasn't all that great. Mine was phenomenal. What was yours?
It was fantastic.
Yeah.
It really was. That's just a not funny joke.
I know.
But it was, I mean, it wasn't without its challenges.
Of course.
Without a doubt. I think, but for the most part, it was an unbelievable upbringing. A mom and dad that, did their best to point me to Jesus at every turn, despite, sometimes I think the biggest struggle being the preacher's kid was not necessarily the expectations my parents placed on me, but sometimes the expectations placed on me by the other people in the church.
Yes.
A perfect example of that would be, in fact, I told this story in one of my books, and it was the story of the day that I got kicked out of Royal Rangers, which was like the Christian version of Boy Scouts.
Yep.
And on Wednesday nights, the adults would be in service, and the kids, we'd all go down to this Christian scouting thing, Royal Rangers. And the head scout, what do they call him? Like the director of it, he would always kick off every meeting saying, "Matthew, go ahead and lead us in prayer." Every week, I had to lead in prayer.
Yeah, we're the preacher's kid.
And just something hit me funny one night, and I said, "No." He said, "Excuse me?" I said, I don't want to pray. And he said, "Well, you have to pray." I said, "How come I always have to pray?" It's like, "Because you're the preacher's kid. You need to set the example." And I don't know, for some reason, this turned into my William Wallace, like Braveheart stand. And I said, "Well, I'm not going to pray, and you can't make me." And he said, "You pray right now, or you go up and sit in your dad's office." And I stood up and I walked out.
Way to go.
And I went and sat in my dad's office, sure that I was going to get in trouble. And I think one of the reasons why I didn't wind up turning my back on the church or having a hard heart towards the church was because of the way my mom and dad would respond to me in moments like that, where I thought I might get grounded, but instead they're like, they wrapped their arms around me and embraced me and said, hey, sometimes people get the wrong idea. They're placing the wrong expectations on you. Keep your eyes on Jesus. And if you look for Jesus in other people, sometimes you'll find him. Yeah. But ultimately humans will let you down sometimes. And so I'm thankful because my mom and dad really helped keep my heart soft towards the Lord and patient towards other people.
Love it. They had a problem with me. The church people had a problem with me because I was always trying to kiss their daughters.
Well, that was me too.
Yeah, they didn't care for that.
I had somebody made an early observation of my music in college. When I was a college student, I started writing songs, and one of my professors, he said, you write about two things, don't you? And I said, what's that? He said, the two G's, God and girls.
What else?
I know. And all these years later, guess what I'm still writing about?
Same thing.
Yeah, he said the girls are my wife and my daughters.
Yes. Your dad would preach. Was your dad a good preacher?
Oh, great preacher, yeah.
I'd love to hear him.
He always, what's interesting about my dad is he was always very introverted. Like I hear stories of him in college where he was the shyest kid, like really? Head down, wouldn't make eye contact with people. So he even said the fact that he became a pastor was really, like kind of the stuff of Moses. You know what I mean? Just like, not me. I'm not the one gifted to be speaking in front of people. But he, one thing I remember too is he worked tirelessly on his messages, on his sermons. I remember that, like him poring over his sermons. And in my early songwriting days, I don't know what gave me this idea, but I would ask him for his sermon notes for the upcoming Sunday, and then he'd give them to me like on a Wednesday or Thursday, and then I would go in the sanctuary and force myself to write a song inspired by the theme of his message.
How incredible.
And then by Sunday, I said, put me in the slot, put me in the post, right after your message, I'll be ready with a song.
I love it.
Now, some Sundays it was really short.
What about
song.
like when he preached on King David, Bathsheba, and Uriah? What'd you write there?
Well, those had little grooves to them, like, hey, baby.
No.
It was, Lord, forgive me.
David, keep your hands to yourself. We could write that.
Don't go chasing anyone else.
I like it. Okay. So that's where you develop the discipline for songwriting. Weekly writing the songs to your dad's sermons.
Yeah, that was the beginning of it.
That's
it was
so great.
It really felt like assignment songwriting, and that's why I think now I thrive when, like, if somebody gives me the script to a movie and says, hey, we need a song. We need to, like the producers of the movie Unplanned, which was about Planned Parenthood, sent me the script and said, we want a title cut. Like, would you write a song called Unplanned? Like, literally, that's your assignment. So I read the script and it feels very much like, okay, I did the same thing with the movie Courageous, the Kendrick brothers.
Yes.
So, and it's not unlike when I get in a room with another artist and the assignment is, I'm with Casting Crowns on a certain day, and my assignment is, what's going on in your life? What's the script of your story? Like, what are you trying to say? And then it's my job to kind of be in that role to just help facilitate, help highlight different aspects that even that person may not be seeing or whatever it is. And so I think that's where a lot of that began, and songs that served very specific purposes too, like, oh, so-and-so's getting married. Well, they need a song, and now all these years later.
More parameters, the easier it is for you to write versus, hey, whatever you want to write about. The parameters help you focus in.
Yeah, I think, and beyond just songwriting, you just like having a mission, having that like North Star to point to it. You can find a lot of freedom in that when when you're set free to go, well, I know where I'm heading. Now there's a lot of ways to, there's a lot of freedom you can discover in that. So yeah, I do think even when I make my records, like I've got to have the the point, the assignment. And so a lot of times what I'll do is I'll latch on to, and I really feel like, I really truly feel like the Lord gives me this sort of umbrella concept.
Yeah.
And then I start chasing after the umbrella concept, and the songs are fitting into it. That's what I'm doing right now. I'm working on a record called My Story, Your Glory.
Oh, I love
and
that.
It's 2 components.
Okay.
Right. And I write songs inspired by people's stories. I don't know when this is coming out, but I haven't announced this yet, but who cares? So I'm telling people stories, right? And it's like, it's what I'm known as doing. You know?
Hello, my name is.
Yeah, these songs that are inspired by people's stories. And then the Your Glory component is like a worshipful response to
like
God
that.
at work in the stories of our lives.
Love
so
it.
once I got that assignment, I'm like, okay, here's my two buckets, if you will. And so then you start chasing after it that way, you know?
Do you remember like the first time you wrote a song, people really liked it and wanted to hear it again? Do you remember what the song was? Do you remember how it made you feel?
I do. Well, it really comes back to those early days. I shouldn't say early days, but I mean early for me, but I was actually pretty much a late bloomer from a music standpoint. I didn't start until I was really like a senior in high school, freshman in college.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's the answer to that is twofold. One, it was in my church when I would get up on that Sunday and play that song that tied perfectly into Dad's message. And even more than the feedback from the church people, which they're in your corner. Like, you know, they thought I was Elvis. You know what I mean? And, but it was more about seeing like God at work and how music was cutting straight to the heart. And it was this like exclamation mark at the end of this message. And so this
you would sing it at the end of the message or the beginning?
Like at the end. And so it would be this kind of like, it's as if like it's like say you were preaching on Tell Your Heart to Beat Again, and that thought or whatever. And then we get to the end and it's like, I mean, you've seen that. That's been your whole career in ministry too, is your storytelling and your message and the scriptures tying into, you know, and then music just cuts like that. And so seeing God move like that in a really powerful way. And then the second part of that answer was in college. You know, I was at this university. It was the first time in my life not being known as the athlete on campus. And instead I was in this music conservatory, and yet I was in a dorm with all the athletes, and I was super isolated and super lonely, and like they didn't know what to think of me because I wasn't on the team and this, that, but they heard me playing music in my dorm room.
Really?
And they started coming around and they were like, hey, who wrote that song? And I was like, well, that's mine. And they're like, hey, why don't you come play this fraternity party?
Oh, cool.
And next thing I know, I'm in the basement of a dingy frat house, and they're like, hey, everybody, quiet, you know. They'd shut the DJ out, and I'd be sitting there in this beer-soaked basement with all my friends, and they're drunk and trying to figure out their life, and everybody's scared to death. And here I am singing songs about God and girls. But seeing how the Lord was using that, like, whoa, so wait a minute. The Lord's using this gift of songwriting to speak to people inside the 4 walls of a church, and then speaking to people in this basement of a fraternity house. I think of the Dr. Seuss book, "Oh, the Places You'll Go," right? How cool is that?
Did you always have a love for the English language vocabulary? When I've written with you, you're pulling from so many great streams of vocabulary, and your vocabulary is not just the normal vocabulary. It's descriptive. The economy of words, you're able to get so much thought into so few words.
Wow.
And it fits like a soul puzzle. Did you always have a great love for the English language, for poets?
I remember I had an English teacher in high school, Mrs. Augustine, who, like, you know how you can remember like that one word of affirmation?
Yeah,
right?
That's Miss Glenn for me.
Okay.
English teacher.
High
school.
And did she affirm that you had a gift for words?
She did.
Or what was it, your writing? Or
Yeah, it was just a paper, and she
said, "What?" I'm just curious what she said.
Oh, she said, you know, there's you have a grasp on the English language that could lead to, you know, poetry, songwriting, different things. But I was so shy. For that lady to say that to me, it just did something. What was that your experience?
Very similar. Yeah. She just said, hey, you really have a gift for words, like the way that you put them together and how you're approaching it. I don't even remember what report it was. And chances are it was a report heavily inspired by Cliff's Notes,
Oh yeah.
So I wouldn't say it, I would not say I was a bookworm by any means. I've grown to really love reading books now, and especially as I've begun writing my own, it's like if I want to do a podcast, I want to learn from great podcasts. If I want to write a book, I don't ever want to assume that I have it all figured out. But I mean, I'm sure you poured through like Max Lucado's books too.
Of course.
I mean, I think one of the great wordsmiths of our day,
no doubt,
beyond, not just in the Christian literature, but like just the way that he weaves words together is, to me, the way that you tell a story is very similar. Like I've heard you tell stories, and it's just like, it's masterful in how I've heard you tell stories in the songwriting room, and I'm like, I feel like I'm listening to an audiobook. Like just the way that you tell is so moving, and that's just a gift, So I would just say that there is something to be said about the 10,000 hours too. Like I've never felt like I'm naturally gifted in music. I've always felt very much blue collar in my approach. And I'll tell you, it was interesting at the university where I studied music. I quickly, you step into a room and you quickly assess what's going on.
Yep.
I did that in college, and I quickly was able to assess I am half as talented as everybody else in this conservatory. I don't know how I got in here. I don't know why they gave me a scholarship. They must have seen past the rough around my edges. But I'm telling you, I mean, these were gifted composers, arrangers. They could read the music off the page, and brilliant. And so early on, I adopted this mentality, and I've remembered it ever since. It was like, half the talent, twice the drive. Ooh. That's literally always been my secret mentality. And it's not always true. You know what I mean? It's not like, I'm not like being self-deprecating in a way that's damaging. It's just like in my mind, I don't ever want to just like sit back and rest on some perceived gifting that I have. I want to always work at it. You know what I mean? So
your work ethic is incredible. Do you remember the day I walked into that recording studio in Nashville? You were sitting against a bank of windows, arched windows, about 10 in the morning. The sun was coming through, pouring over your shoulder. You were sitting on a bench with a guitar. Over across the way I think it was a stand-up piano, maybe. I can't remember.
It was
Bernie.
Yeah.
Bernie Herms, great producer.
Oh, yeah, great piano player.
Composer. And I just remember feeling like, what am I doing in this room? With the great Matthew West, Bernie Herms. And we were there to write a song, and I felt so intimidated. You were so
Seriously?
kind. Yeah, you were so kind. You were so engaging. And then y'all said, okay, what you got? And I remember thinking, what do I got? Not much. But I began to tell the story of that pastor going in with the heart surgeon into the room where the lady had the surgery. The heart didn't start beating. And I got to the line. He said, the doctor said to her, tell your heart to beat again. And I remember the look on your face, still to this day. You picked up your guitar and you said, forgiven, if only you'd forgive yourself. You've been made new, but you're still standing where you fell. That came out of you like, what? How? Matthew, I've never seen anyone like you. Never. And I've been alive a long time.
Well, I can't tell you how much.
Do you remember that moment? Or does it just all run together after a while?
Well, there's no replacing a moment like that And it's funny how two people can walk into the same room feeling the same kind of intimidated, because the same mentality that has me in my head thinking half the talent, twice the drive, also has me walking into every room with the very initial thought of, I don't think I belong in this room.
Oh, man.
So it's interesting how we could both walk in the
I
room
know.
and then something so special take place that day. But what you did that day was you gave us the mission, right? And that's what you do among many things. I'm not trying to, I just have so much respect for you, but I'm not trying to gurm, I'm just being honest. Like, this is what you bring the mission, right? The assignment was there when you told that story, and it very much felt, I remember being so moved. All of us were so moved through that entire songwriting experience.
Definitely,
right?
Definitely.
And the thing about that, now I don't know where that comes from. Like, I know where it comes. We both know where it comes from, but like when something just comes out, I'm like, that's the Lord. You know what I mean? And I will also say it feels like it comes from a place in my heart that's true to my story. Because those lines, like even when you just sang them back to me, I know that is oftentimes how I am. I know that that's true to me. Like, forgiven, if only you'd forgive. Like, the idea of still standing at the place.
Brilliant.
Yeah, it's if Peter had never jumped out of the boat and accepted Jesus' forgiving invitation to come and have breakfast after he denied him. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
When Peter said, I'm going to go back and go fishing, and then they hear somebody calling out to him. Now, what if Peter would have just said, I don't think that's Jesus, I'm just going to stay here and fish? He would have missed the redemptive. You know what I mean? I feel like a lot of times I can be the equivalent of Peter just, not turning around and noticing that it was Jesus who helped him catch all the fish.
Yeah,
So,
it was.
but that was just a special experience. I'll tell you what, man, I can't point to a song that I'm more proud of in my career than that one that you and I got to be a part of together.
What?
Seriously. Can you? There's all songs are special for different reasons,
Yeah,
right?
but you've written for Casting Crowns and everybody.
But the stories you've heard, surely, about how that song has spoken to people.
So much.
Sometimes at a show, I'll tell people like my story of how I got rejected by all the record labels for 3 years, and as a result, I became a full-time songwriter, and now how I have sort of two careers, right?
Yes.
In fact, like at my show, we'll play one of those songs or whatever. But sometimes I'll play a little bit of Tell Your Heart to Beat Again.
Really?
And just even playing a chorus at the end of the show, if someone comes up to me like, that song, you have no idea. And so, and I'm sure you've heard that so many times. So
I have.
It's just unbelievable.
So you like the Phillips, Craig, and Dean version or the Danny Goku version?
I'll take Phillips, Craig, and Dean all day.
There you go.
Right?
Yes, sir.
Danny who?
Danny who?
Can that guy sing or what? Let's just be honest.
What in the world?
He came over to my house one day and we wrote a song, and then he went into the vocal booth, and I was like, I quit.
Yeah, no. It's
not fair.
It isn't fair.
I'm just glad we're so much better looking than him. Because
the
Lord,
definitely.
he is fair in that.
The Lord, he gives you, whatever you need. And he gave us looks.
He knew that this would not be hidden under a bushel. No, but and even like, there's such an iconic sound to Phillips, Craig, and Dean that I love. Like,
did your parents
There's
like
a God, there's a God. Oh my gosh. Like,
did your parents like us?
Oh, they loved him.
Did they?
I love Phillips, Craig, and Dean.
Oh, you're too young.
My dad's actually here with me in Texas, so
he's
excited to see it.
Oh, I can't wait to meet him. Okay, I just want to thank him for you.
Oh, man.
Just the gift of you. Man, what would the world be if you weren't in it?
Are we talking like George Bailey kind of stuff here? Are you about to take me to see what it was like if I'd never been born?
No. Ottersville.
I love that. Do you watch that movie every Christmas? You better.
Christmas.
See, I knew we were more alike than we realized.
It's long.
I watch it probably 10 times.
I have to watch it in parts.
Oh, yeah. I'll just keep it on in the background.
Yeah.
But then every now and then I'll just catch a scene and I'll get teary-eyed.
I know. I love it. The Restless Heart of a Creative which you are, that a thing where you're never at home wherever you are. When you're on the road in a bus with a crowd of people loving what you have done through God in their life, and they're so appreciative and they're singing, that's so fulfilling. But I many times have come to myself and thought, I need to be home. I need to be home. Then when I'm at home, surrounded by my family, and I'm thinking, I need to be singing. That thing. You ever wrestle with that?
I mean, you just verbalized the very real struggle that I deal with, even sitting here with you today. Like, and if it's if you've never reached a healthy like place with that, you'll never be able to fully be in the moment where you are, and that's been a struggle. I mean, and I think then on top of that, it's the guilt of being gone. Right. You know, I missed my daughter's lacrosse game yesterday.
Yep.
Missing, and not just the big things, you're missing the little moments too.
Yep.
You know, it's interesting. I had a guy on my podcast named John Acuff. Have you read any of John's books?
I don't know that I have.
Well, he had something interesting to say about that. He said that he would do this thing when he started public speaking. He goes and like speaks at different companies and stuff like that. But he said he would make this big deal about leaving, you know, and he'd tell his daughters, just 3 more sleeps until daddy's home, and make this big deal. And the kids are upset. And he's, you know, and his wife pulled him aside, as, you know, many of our wives would typically do, and be truth tellers. And she's like, hey, you know what? We're going to be okay. Like your guilt that you're feeling is kind of you're making a big deal out of this because you feel so guilty.
Yeah.
They don't even know to be sad until you start saying you 3 more sleeps, right? And she goes, look, you're doing what you've been called to do. Rest in that. Go.
Yeah.
And we'll be here when you, and
I love that.
Even her words to him were words to me too. And my wife has spoken the equivalent of that to me as well. Doesn't make it easier.
No.
You know what I mean? But what you just said about the restless heart, like, it is a challenge. I can't wait to get home. And I still struggle, honestly. I feel a tremendous amount of guilt sometimes, where I'm just like, I'm not with my family. Am I a non-factor in my daughter's life today? How do I do that better? How do I, and what it's led me to do is to say no more often, to say no to, because really it's just, it's a struggle.
Okay.
I'd be the last one to say that I've figured it out.
Well, I'm praying for you, your family, as you continue to wrestle with it, because there's not a quick fix or a solve.
No.
But,
in the last couple of years, though, was a forced fix of that.
Oh, yeah.
You know, where you go, okay,
I'm home.
And man, and the closeness we shared was a beautiful thing.
I love it.
My relationship with my wife and my daughters. And so I'm mindful of that as I step back into motion, doing something I know that the Lord's called me to do, but also realizing that He's called me first and foremost to my family. I write a lot of songs about that too.
I know.
Like, there's a song on one of the ones I've written that haunts me the most. It was never a radio hit, but it's called "The Beautiful Things We Miss." And it says, "I don't want to miss it. I don't want to look back someday and find everything that really mattered was right in front of me this whole time. So open up my eyes, Lord. Keep me in the moment just like this. Before the beautiful things we love become the beautiful things we miss."
Oh, man, that's good.
But that's like a haunting melody.
That's haunting.
In the best way. You know, sometimes conviction gets a bad rap.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And that's the Holy Spirit kind of reminding me, like, hey, don't miss it, you know. I
appreciate your time with me today.
I could do this for hours.
Thank you for taking us backstage into your heart.
You were born to have a podcast, Pastor Randy.
No, Lord, no. Who wants to talk to me?
This was a blast, man.
Okay. I thank you for the gift you are to my life and the gift you are to the whole world.
Thanks, Pastor.
You are Matthew West, and there will never be another.
Man, I'm going to walk out of here with my feet off the ground. This is my daily You should call this Daily Affirmations with Pastor Randy. My head's not going to be able to fit through the door when I get home.
We have big doors here in Texas.
Thank you.
I love you.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate you. Love you too.
Thanks for your time, Matthew. Matthew West, I love you. Wasn't that incredible? To find out more on Matthew, his music, his books, his podcast, his nonprofit, visit MatthewWest.com and follow him on all his socials. I do. Thank you for tuning in, and remember to rate, review, and subscribe to the show. And when you do, it helps us get the message out to even more people. If you have a question you'd like to hear answered on the podcast, email me, podcast@life.family. We'd love to hear from you. Until next time, I love you.